What is up, guys? It is time for Nutrition 101. Now, here's the thing about this. This is the first step in learning how to control your nutrition. There is Nutrition 102. Once you're through this and having completed the challenge at the end of this presentation, then move on to Nutrition 102. See, the goal here is that you can build lifelong habits around your nutritional choices. That's the goal out of this, okay? This is not a lose weight quick scheme. This is not a I got to lose 20 pounds in a month scheme. This is I'm going to completely overhaul and revamp the way I think about and approach the way I eat. That's what this is about. These next two conversations, that's what they're about, okay? So that being said, nutrition actually starts with your identity, okay? What that means is, and if you go back to foundations number 3, and you guys can go find those videos on our YouTube channel, but foundations number 3 talks about your identity, the way you see yourself, okay? When you begin this journey, typically we begin this journey because we're overweight and we need to lose weight, which may be a true statement, or maybe, I'm unhealthy and I'm on some medications that I want to be out of. And so your brain sees yourself as an overweight person or an unhealthy person. What we have to do is shift that perception. And I do mean you have to do it. You must do this to be successful long term. You are no longer an overweight person trying to lose weight. You are now a fit person who makes fit person decisions, because that's what fit people do. You have to shift that, okay? You're no longer a sick person trying to get healthy. You are now a healthy person that makes healthy decisions, because that's what healthy people do. As soon as you actually make that shift in your mind, all of these decisions get very simple. Are they easy? No, you're going to have to replace a lot of habits that you've built over the however many years it took you to get to this stage where you're like, dude, I got to do something. But once your brain can make that shift, all of these decisions get much, much easier. Okay? So, all the way back in foundations number 1, we talked about this pyramid, right? This is the theoretical development of an athlete. Okay? And at the base of this is your nutrition. You can't outwork a bad diet. You just can't. Eventually, it will catch up with you. Nutrition is the foundation of becoming a fit and healthy person. So we need to keep that in mind as we move through trying to get to the gym and trying to get our workouts in and get outside and get sunshine. All of those things are good, but the foundation is in our nutrition, okay? In fact, Coach Greg Glassman, the guy that started CrossFit, sat down and thought about, okay, how can I summarize becoming a fit and healthy person in a very short way? And so he wrote something called World-Class Fitness in 100 words. And this is it right here. The very first chunk of World-Class Fitness in 100 words is eat meat and vegetables, nuts and seeds, some fruit, little starch, and no sugar. Keep intake to levels that will support exercise but not body fat. So the first thing you have to do to become a fit, healthy person is choose what you eat intentionally and how much of it you eat. It's that important, okay? So we're going to go through all of this stuff. And as we talk about this, I want you guys to know that this is kind of the guiding principle for everything that I'm about to teach you, okay? So how are we going to do this? Well, the first thing you need to know is we're going to stick with our pyramid model because it keeps things really simple, okay? Now, the first thing you have to do is you have to start tracking what's actually happening. If you don't know what's going on, then you don't know what you need to change. You may be doing some things in your diet correctly, but you don't know until you start tracking. And so the first thing that I want you to do for the first week or two that you're doing this is track your calories, and track how much water you're drinking, because you can't make any changes if you don't know what you need to change. So the first thing we need to do is track our calories and our water. Why? Well, because we need to know how many calories we're eating. Okay. Don't worry about what kinds of foods or anything like that just yet. Just start tracking. And my rule here is there is no judgment about what you're currently eating. I will never judge you for what you eat. Okay. I have an internal fat kid. I love food. Okay. I will eat things like bacon and cake and donuts and brownies. I'm a human too. I get it. I'm never going to judge you for what you eat. But you can't make changes if you don't know what you're actually eating on a regular basis. And a lot of times our eating habits are just that. They're habits. We're just eating because that's what we do. We're not being cognizant of what we're actually putting in our bodies. So my rule for folks is, I don't care if it's a digital journal or a written journal. The rule is, if it goes in your mouth, it goes in the journal. All right? No judgment there. And then water. Okay, now people ask me, like, how much should I be eating? And it's kind of tucked behind the little video here. From a calorie perspective, it's your goal body weight times 12. That's about how many calories you should be eating. Okay, and your water is much simpler. It's half of your body weight in ounces of water with a maximum of 120 ounces. Okay, so if you're over 240, 120 is where you cut it off. That's about a gallon. It's 8 inches shy, or 8 ounces shy of a gallon of water. You don't need more than that basically ever. Okay. So about half your body weight in ounces of water, and your goal body weight times 12 is the number of calories you should be eating. But don't worry about trying to hit that number. Really just track what you're doing. You have to know before we make any changes. Okay. Now, the next thing on the list is we got to start improving your food quality. All right. Socrates says, let thy food be thy medicine and thy medicine be thy food. Or excuse me, Hippocrates, not Socrates, Hippocrates. And what that means is your internal health will be controlled by the quality of the food that you eat. Now, in America, we have a lot of things that I call processed food product. So it looks like food, and it's got calories, and usually it's pretty delicious. And sometimes it's even marketed as health food, but it's not. Okay. If you go back a couple of slides to World Class Fitness in 100 words, what did that say? Eat meat, vegetables, nuts, seeds, fruits, starches. That's it. And it says no sugars. And what he's talking about there is added sugars. So things that are added to food to make them sweeter, whether it's an added sugar like high fructose corn syrup or cane sugar or sucralose or any of that. If it's added to the food to give it sweetness, you got to stay away from it. It says no sugar, which means no added sugar, right? But if it's meat, vegetables, nuts, seeds, fruits, and starches are things like beans and potatoes and rice and squashes. Those are starches. So if it's not on that list, don't eat it. Well, what about bread? Right now, you don't need it. Okay? Bread is not in and of itself bad, but if it's not on that list, don't eat it. Okay? The kind of the general guideline is, if you can't directly pick it and eat it, or it didn't have a face before you ate it, you should probably not eat it, right? If it didn't have a mom or come from the ground, don't eat it. It's really simple, okay? And don't get bogged down in the technicality of it, all right? Well, I thought this was unhealthy. I thought that was unhealthy. Look, chicken, beef, fish, game, it's all good stuff to eat, okay? Vegetables, fruits. If somebody told you that fruit was bad for you because it has sugar in it, stop listening to that person. That's idiotic. Okay? Fruit is good for you. Now, fruit is something you have to be careful how much, and we'll talk about how much next. But it's good for you. Okay. Those natural foods are good for you. They will always be good for you, and they will always be better for you than anything that comes in a box. That's a mixture of different ingredients to become quote unquote maybe a health food. Just stick with the basics: meat, veggies, nuts, seeds, fruits, starches. Done. Okay. Why food quality first? Because if you shift your food quality first, oftentimes caloric intake takes care of itself. Meaning, if you're eating high quality foods, it's much more difficult to overeat high quality foods because they're not hyper palatable and they don't digest super fast. And so now you want more. Okay. If you're eating high quality food, it becomes thy medicine, which means you're healing yourself internally, and all of those unhealthy mechanisms that are firing in your body get cleaned up and your body starts functioning the way it needs to function. Your brain clears up, your skin clears up, all kinds of good things happen. And you haven't even started really thinking about how much should I eat. You've just said, hey, I'm going to eat better food. Okay. It's also a much simpler step. I'm going to stop eating these things and I'm going to replace them with all of these things that I know are healthy. Okay. If it's man-made, you should probably stay away from it. If it's nature-made, you're probably good. Okay. So that's step number 2. Step number 3. Now we start talking about what we call macros. Okay. Macros are macronutrients, and we talk about this in Nutrition 102. This is where calories come from. So you have carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. Those are the 3 macronutrients. Those are the 3 main macronutrients. Okay. You want to balance that out at a level where 40% of your calories are coming from carbs, 30% from proteins, and 30% from fats. How do I do that? How do I figure that out? Okay. Well, there are 4 calories per gram of carbohydrate. There are 4 calories per gram of protein. There are 9 calories per gram of fat. There you go. And if you go out there and Google, hey, zone diet calculator, it'll lay it all out for you. Calorie or macro calculator. You can find calculators where you can set your percentages and say, I'm going to eat this many calories. How many grams does that look like? And it'll give that to you. This is where you have to start paying attention to the math of your food, which means that you also have to buy a food scale. Okay. If you're just measuring with measuring cups and measuring spoons, there's some margin of error there that can derail you, right? If you're off by a couple of calories here or there, well, a couple of calories over the course of a day could be anywhere between 50 and 200 calories. Well, if you're overeating by 200 calories, that's, it doesn't take very long to get to a place where, oh no, I've eaten, 3,500 extra calories over 2 weeks. That's nuts. 3,500 calories is 1 pound of fat. That's a lot. So getting a food scale and learning how to weigh and measure your food appropriately so you can learn appropriate portion sizes for you is a big deal. And it's a big learning curve. It's going to take you a little while to get used to this. But here's something I'm going to tell you guys. I have been doing this as a professional for 20 years. I still have and daily use my food scale to measure my food. Can I eyeball it? Am I pretty good at eyeballing it? Yeah, I'm pretty good, but I'm not as precise as I would be if I'm using my scale. And I'm somebody who, if I just let myself go and feed myself the way I want to feed myself, I tend to overeat. That's the way I operate. So I make sure that I don't by staying in control of my food choices 80% of the time, 90% of the time. And I weigh and measure my food. So that's part of the next part of this is buy a food scale so that you can weigh and measure these things out. Okay. It does make a difference. It does matter. In fact, this might be the thing that matters most to your overall weight and fat loss. because a huge part of this equation, part of the equation is getting your internal mechanisms healthy and healing those mechanisms with good quality food. The other half of this equation, and it's actually probably it's not even half, it's a bigger portion of this, is something called thermodynamics. Okay. Calories in versus calories out is how you control your weight. If you're not eating the correct amount of calories, your weight isn't going to do what you want it to do. And the only way to know how many calories you're eating is if you're weighing and measuring your food. It's the only way. You have to be precise. So this is going to take a little bit more focus and a little bit more time and a little bit more energy, but in the long run, it will pay off because you'll learn really good habits. Okay. The next thing on the list is food timing. This is a conversation I have with two kinds of people. And those two kinds of people are athletes and people trying every little trick in the book to lose the weight. All right. So let's talk about athletes first. If you are a competitive athlete, then your food timing can be helpful to performance when it has to do with timing certain nutrients around your workouts and your practices. It can make a difference. How much difference? It's like 0.5% of a difference. It can be a small separator between you and others as a competitive athlete. For the people that are trying every little trick in the book to lose weight, this is the people who like, well, I do, intermittent fasting and I only, eat 8 hours out of the day and I have a 16-hour fasted window, or I stop eating at 7 p.m. because after 7 p.m. my metabolism slows down and blah, 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 blah. For you, if you're just trying to lose weight and be healthy, food timing makes almost no difference. If you don't have the two below it down pat, meaning really good food quality, and tracking your macros and making sure you're hitting them, food timing is going to make literally zero difference. Okay. Now, if you're using intermittent fasting to control your eating window so you don't overeat, okay, then that can be a helpful tool. But outside of that, like cutting off your eating at 7 p.m. because it makes you lose or gain weight, that's not true. It doesn't work that way. Thermodynamics is thermodynamics, and it doesn't change depending on the time of day. So get your macros in line and make sure you're getting high quality food before you ever start thinking about food timing. And once you're there, you likely won't have to worry about it. Okay. Now, the top of this pyramid is supplements. Here's the thing about supplements. Supplements are something that are created to supplement an already good diet. So if you aren't doing everything below this, supplements are not going to help you. They're not going to do anything. And most supplements aren't as helpful as you want them to be. Now, when it boils down to supplements, are there supplements out there that are very helpful? Yes. Can you take a multivitamin to kind of fill some gaps while you're trying to figure this out? Sure, absolutely. They can be very helpful. Can you use a protein powder to help up your protein level if you're struggling with that? Because it's one of the things that people struggle with at first when they're shifting their diet. It becomes difficult to get the amount of protein in because you're not used to eating that amount of protein. So a protein shake can be helpful to raise your protein levels. Absolutely. But it should be something to help you fill in gaps. It shouldn't be the thing you're relying on. There is no magic pill. In fact, now we're having this conversation about things like Ozempic and GLP-1s and all of this stuff like that. And those can be helpful, but those also have their own list of really, really nasty side effects. So we're going to try and stay away from those things and focus on, am I eating really quality foods in the right amounts? You do those two things first. Then we can start having conversations about, hey, what kind of supplements can help nudge me forward here? What kind of supplements do I need versus what somebody else needs? There's not really any blanket like, hey, everybody should be taking this. Some people need it, some people don't. And that's a conversation to have if you're doing everything else right first. Okay. Now, I told you at the beginning of this, there is a challenge to getting this going. The first 2 weeks, for the first 2 weeks after watching this, the only thing I want you to do is track your food and your water. That's it. Just track what you're doing now. See if you're doing anything right. Am I eating the right amount of protein? Am I eating really quality foods most of the time already? Am I drinking enough water on a daily basis? Those are questions that you have to answer first before we start tinkering and changing and messing with stuff. You don't know, you can't fix what's broken if you don't know what's broken. So start tracking it so that you have a real vision for what you're actually doing now. And I want you to do that for 2 full weeks. For 14 straight days, if it goes in your body, it goes in the journal. All right? And it's more helpful. Like if that's overwhelming, you can do a photo diary and just take a picture of everything that you eat and then look. And it's like, okay, look at the quality of food I'm eating. And is this too much? Right? Sometimes it looks like, well, I don't eat that much. And that much was a Chick-fil-A chicken sandwich and some fries and a sugar-free lemonade. Well, here's the thing. That little meal might have 1,000 calories in it. And you do that twice a day, there's 2,000 calories. And then you go have dinner. Like, well, now you're pushing on 3,000 calories. And very few people actually need 3,000 calories. So even though it looks like, hey, I don't eat very much, that not very much could be some very calorically dense foods, but you don't know that until you start logging that and having a mental recognition of what's actually happened in your daily life. And again, there's no judgment here, guys. I'm not telling you this to be judgy or convict you or make you feel bad about it. We have to step into this place where I have to have a reality check about what's going on in my actual diet so I can make the appropriate changes in my life for me to reach my goals, right? That's the goal. After those first 2 weeks, in the next 2 weeks, the only thing that I want you to change is make better food quality choices for 2 weeks. Don't worry about tracking your macros. Don't worry about that. In fact, this is a great opportunity to start moving to a photo journal where it's like, hey, for 2 weeks, I was eating this way. And now for the next 2 weeks, I'm making these swaps. And I want you to think about it that way, right? I'm going to make these swaps. I'm going to go from fried chicken to grilled chicken. I'm going to go from super fatty meats to much leaner cuts of meat. I'm going to go from eating French fries all the time to eating actual vegetables. I'm going to go from eating out for every meal to going to the grocery store and buying and prepping my own food so that I have control of what's going in my body. Now, how do I know what foods to eat? Well, we talked about this already. Meat, veggies, nuts, seeds, fruits, and starches. Those 6 things. If it's not on the list, don't put it in your body, okay? Don't overcomplicate this and say, well, but technically, no, don't do that, okay? Meat, veggies, nuts, seeds, fruits, and starches. The starches are what? Beans, rice, potatoes, and squashes. We tend to think of squashes as veggies anyway, so okay. Potatoes, we tend to think of veggies anyway, which is great, but if you're going to eat potatoes, don't eat French fried potatoes. Don't eat hash browns, right? Bake your potato, roast your potato, and have that with other vegetables. Think about the quality of the food you're eating and be honest about it. Be intellectually honest about this. First 2 weeks, track everything that's happening now. Second 2 weeks, start making swaps for healthier foods. That's it. That's all you have to do. Okay? Now, once you've gotten through those first 2 challenges, which is going to take you 4 weeks. So don't go watch 102 until you've gone through those 4 weeks. Once you've gone through those 2 challenges, now come back and watch Nutrition 102, and you can take the next steps. But here's the thing, and this is what I want to leave you with. If you want to change your life, you have to trust the process of building new habits. You have to build new habits in order to change what you're doing now. And it's going to take longer than you think it's going to. We've all heard that saying that it takes 21 days to make or break a habit. That's not true. That's not what the research shows. The research shows that you have to create the new habit that replaces an old bad one, and you have to stick to it for at least 60 days before it starts to take root. That's the minimum. Some people pick it up right at about 60 days, but for most of us, it's much longer than that. It can take up to 180 days, 6 months, before you've actually got that down where it's habitual like the old bad habit was. So you have to stick with this for a long time. The first 4 weeks is just a starter. It's just a stepping off point to start getting you to think about these things and start making those shifts. If you want to change your life, you have to be willing to build the process that's going to take you down that road. And it's going to take longer than you think, and it's going to be more work than you think, and it's going to be harder than you think. Be okay with that and just stay focused on that's okay. This is hard. Hard is okay. Hard is good because it's going to teach me things and it's going to make me stronger to build the life that I want to build and build the life that I want to live. If I want to be fit, if I want to be healthy, this is what I have to do. Okay. So if you guys have questions, as always, here is my email. Shoot me an email. If you ask questions, that's what I'm here for. But for this part, go do those 2 challenges, and then we'll see you in 4 weeks at Nutrition 102. Have a great day, guys.